What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show, man. Recap with Mo. Well, we're getting ready to get into another episode breakdown of BounceTv's own Johnson. But before we get into this thing, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit snit that's going down, alright? So the episode we're getting ready to get into is for season 4, episode number 1, titled Southern Gents. Now, the synopsis states, the Johnson men are fitted for Keith's upcoming wedding and urged to bring a date. Jarvis is suspicious of his new client's low appraisal. Greg is promoted to Sous-Chef while Jarvis realizes just how ghetto the dating market really is. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this thing. Alright, y'all, so we kicked this episode off seeing the fellas going through a counseling session. So we see Omar, we see Keith, and we see Jarvis. Now, we do not see Greg, in this session, but we do see him later. Now, throughout this session, we see the counselor, going over different things with each gentleman. Then we see Jarvis, who's dealing with his own demons, where he decides to purchase items or material things for himself to get over some of the things that he's dealing with. And of course, the counselor notices, the Rolex on his wrist. So he was like, well, that must have been a hard thing that you were going through during that time, because, you ended up purchasing a very high-end item. And of course, he conveys to him that it was due to his divorce. But the one that really needed this session, or seemed to need this session the most, was Brother Omar. Now, Brother Omar is literally in tears, dealing with the issues of his past. Now, he's trying to deal with them, but he really doesn't want to talk about them. Now, the counselor conveys to him that he still feels like he's dealing with some of those issues from the church. And let me just say before I get into this, trigger warning to anybody that's been in these situations. I'm just talking about the show, all right? So, the pastor that he grew up in this church, within this church with, did some foul things to him. And of course, he was able to deal with those situations as he became a grown man, but it still affected him. And of course, that was someone that he looked up to, right? So he's literally in tears. He's dealing with it. He didn't really want to talk about it initially. But of course, the counselor is like, look, man, we got nothing but time. I'm here for you. And of course, I believe that made it a lot easier for him to really discuss how he was feeling. So anyhow, going on from there. So now we outside and we see the fellas are waiting on Omar to return from his session or whatnot. So he finally shows up, where he pretty much conveys to them that, hey man, today was hard. But I did find out that there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to have to work through, and I'm going to go throughout this whole process to make myself better, right? So all the guys were glad to hear that. I believe it's Jarvis that states that they're all a work in progress. So, keep on keeping on. Don't give up the fight, right? So anyhow, Greg is like, man, look, man, we already done had one counseling session. Are we going to continue to counsel ourselves outside the counseling session, or we're going to get up and get out and do something, right? So they head over to be fitted for Keith's wedding. So when we actually get over to the fitting place, we see Keith is up in the mirror. He's liking what he's seeing. Now, of course, the fellas are going in on him because of the high waters he got on. Now, they are some ankle beaters, right? But of course, he's like, look, man, we on the beach. So yeah, right now you're laughing at me, but wait till we get on the beach and your clothing gets wet. So that's a whole different situation, right? So anyhow, the conversation is going well, but of course, Greg has to know why do we have to go all the way to the daggone Bahamas for you to get married? Like, when we have perfectly good venues right here in the city of Atlanta. Now, I was with you until you said right here in Atlanta, right? Because can we get outside of Georgia? Can we at least do that, my boy? So, of course, the fellas are like, come on, man, the Bahamas? Like, why wouldn't you want to go to the Bahamas? So Greg suggests that Keith gets married at Lake Lanier. Now, I've done quite a bit of, research on Lake Lanier, and I don't think nobody is trying to go down to Lake Lanier to get married. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that might be a great destination for some, but daggone it, not me and people that look like me. Like, we're not going down there. But anyhow, as they kept talking, of course, Keith wanted to know, if everyone had their flight, all of that stuff scheduled and all of that stuff paid for. And of course, Greg is like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it today. Now, I see why you sitting over here talking about you want to have it at Lake Lanier, because you don't want to pay no money, my boy. you trying to be cheap on this man's wedding. Now, we do find out that Keith and this girl is eloping. So, of course, this ain't going to be no traditional type of situation. Of course, his soon-to-be father-in-law and her mother, they're not invited because of, the friction between he and Keith. So, it's going to be a small situation, right? So anyhow, it brings up the conversation of who's going to be your plus one, talking about the fellas. So, of course, Jarvis is like, man, I'm enjoying myself being single, so it's just going to be me. Now, of course, I believe Omar is like, Naomi really wanted to go to the Bahamas. So, of course, the fellas are like, man, go ahead and invite her. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, the only thing she could say is no. So, of course, we're going to have to wait to see how that comes out, right? So, anyhow, from there, we head over to Omar's office where we see Omar and Jarvis. Now, they're in there, they're in Omar's office having a conversation, throwing jokes around or whatnot when the conversation becomes a lot more serious. So, when Omar asked Jarvis about business, how was business going, and, Jarvis pretty much conveys to him that business has been slow. He's actually had to lay some people off from work or whatnot. Now, of course, after hearing this, Omar's like, look, man, the money that you gave us last year, I can give it back to you. Now, Jarvis is full of pride, and he's like, look, man, I'm good. Absolutely not. That's your money. Don't worry about it. I'll work it out. So, of course, he's like, look, man, it's here if you need it. So going on from there, he tells Jarvis that, hey, man, you probably need to team up or tag team with Antoinette. Now, if you know anything about Antoinette, they've had a little bit of entanglements here and there. Now, he really doesn't want to work with her because it would not be a tag team. It would be him being an employee, which he absolutely does not want. He wants to be able to call his own shots. So I guess we'll have to figure out what's going on there, but we will see. So anyhow, going on from there, we now head over to the restaurant where we see Chef William Williams and the crew, throwing Greg a surprise graduation party. The only issue is, though, Greg hasn't officially graduated, so he doesn't graduate until next week. So they done made a cake, even though it looks pitiful. They tell him it's a good cake. Just think about it on the inside. So maybe they can freeze it or do whatever they need to do with it, but it won't be good until next week. So anyhow, long story short, Chef Williams wants to talk to Greg about potentially becoming second in command at his restaurant. So he offers him the sous-chef position. And of course, Greg is like, man, I got another job situation set up. You're going to have to be able to come with the pay. Now, of course, he tells him it's something over at Piccadilly's. And I was so, of course, the chef is like, for real? Piccadilly's? All right. I mean, I'm quite sure that I can match anything that they're offering plus some, right? So anyhow, going on from there, though, we head over to see Jarvis, who's working with his new clients potentially, and he's trying to, say all the right things for them to choose him or to pick him to be their realtor. The only issue is he's out of touch with the people. He's been working with these high-end clients, so he really doesn't know how to talk to the middle class or below. So everything that he's throwing at them or in some sort of way is making them feel some sort of way. And I'm like, please stop. Please stop, bro. So anyhow, the husband is like, man, yeah, everything you're saying to me is actually affecting me, making me feel some type of way. And I'm like, me too. So anyhow, long story short, he decides to work with them. They decide to work with him because, of course, they can't get Antoinette because she was way too busy selling houses to the celebrities, right? So anyhow, long story short, they getting screwed. He wants to see the documentation for the appraisal, and the appraisal is way too low. It's not what they believe that the house appraisal should be. And he was like, something has to be wrong. Now, this is the problem with Jarvis. He's been out of pocket too long. He's been out of this league too long. He's been dealing with the big boys. So now getting back to just the normal people, as he stated to these people, like something isn't adding up, but he really doesn't know how to convey that to them. So he's telling them that maybe the house across the way had like a hidden wine cellar. Like, number one, who has a hidden wine cellar downstairs in a normal neighborhood? Of course, there may be some that have a little bar off to the side, but a hidden wine cellar down in the basement? No, absolutely not. So, of course, they're looking at him. He's looking at them, and they're like, bro, you just don't get it. So he was like, well, what else could it be? And they both look at one another, then look at Jarvis, and they're like, bro, it's us. And, of course, he was like, it cannot be. And I'm sitting here like, bro, I don't know how this is going to go, right? So, anyhow, going on from there. So from there, we head over to the lounge where we see the fellas drinking it up, enjoying life. They're celebrating, Greg's promotion, Omar's new business. Even Keith shows up where they celebrate his photography business blowing up. But yet and still, Jarvis is feeling some type of way because his business isn't thriving the way that it was before. So he's like, look, man, I want to toast to you all, but right now I really don't want to toast to myself because I'm selling affordable houses. Now, of course, Keith tries to make a joke out of it, talking about, look, man, me and Jackie, we're going to be looking for a crib later on, so maybe we can be one of those clients to purchase, one of those affordable houses, right? So anyhow, everything is good. Conversation is great. They're talking about the whole situation that went down with Jarvis earlier, where he was conveying to them about, the property assessment, and they talk about how that was proven, how certain individuals would come and, appraise the house way less than they typically would if it was someone that looked like them that showed up, read in between the lines, right? So anyhow, going on from there, Brother Greg just has a way of, messing up the party, right? So he suggests that they invite Eugene to come to the party. Now, Eugene just so happens to be Omar's uncle that fired him from his job, so they haven't spoken since. So, of course, when he says Eugene, of course, everybody's looking at him like, no, we don't want to do that. Omar gets to the point where he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to have a conversation about the situation. And he tells Greg not to mention anything to his uncle or try to rectify anything between the two. Because Omar feels like if his uncle wanted to get in contact with him, he would. But since he hasn't, I'm not talking to him about nothing, right? So anyhow, from there, we head over to see Jarvis and Greg at the bar. Now, Jarvis asked, Greg if he was able to, finalize everything for his flight or whatnot. So, of course, Greg has a response for everything. And unfortunately, he has yet to purchase his flight ticket. So, of course, Jarvis is like, bro, what's going on? Like, you ain't got too much longer. So he conveys to him that his issue is the passport, which he's been waiting on but has yet to receive. He's like, man, you only got a few more weeks before the wedding comes and you have yet to tell Keith about anything. And he was like, when you going to tell him? He was like, well, when my passport comes in. And he was like, man, that could take months. So you need to get in front of this. I don't know what's going on. So while they're in the midst of their conversation, here comes Keith, informing them that he tried to reach out to Omar, but Omar isn't responding. So obviously he's cut off his phone or placed it on Do Not Disturb. But anyhow, as Keith is looking down at the other end of the bar, he sees a young lady that's eyeing Jarvis. So he tells Jarvis not to turn around, not to look. But of course, Jarvis looks anyhow. He just couldn't help himself, right? So now this young lady decides to make her way down to the bar where Jarvis is. Now, when they see her come down, they get up and leave because they're going to leave them some opportunity. You know what I'm saying? That's an opportunity zone, right? If we want to use that term. So now, as they're sitting there, they introduce themselves to one another. And then she offers to buy him a drink. So I'm sitting here like, I don't know nothing about this. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and admit this to y'all. Brother Mo ain't no drinker. I don't drink no alcohol, right? So for me, it even sounded funny for her to be offering him a drink. Now, I know we're in a day and a time where, women feel like they can do that, or, whatever you want to do. But for me, it just felt awkward. Like, it felt out of place a little bit, and I see why. So as they're drinking, they get a little more loose or whatnot, and then the conversation leans into more of touchy-feely. right? So I was like, okay, where is this going? So the next thing you know, we see them in a car. I'm obviously thinking that they're either going to the hotel or they're going back to his place, because she's already stated she's from out of town. She's not from here. So next thing we see is brother Jarvis laid out on his bed. And I'm sitting here like, what in the world happened? Where's old girl? Old girl is gone. And I'm like, Jarvis, where's old girl? Where's your watch? The watch is gone. So that's the first thing he notices when he wakes up. So I guess when he wakes up, he looks at his wrist to see what the time is, but he notices it's not on that wrist. So he immediately goes to the next wrist to see if he switched it up. No, ain't no bling nor no bling on either wrist, bro. So anyhow, he pats his back pocket, ain't no wallet. So he goes out to the hallway to see if he had left it in his jacket. No, player, it's gone, just like the woman is, right? So I don't know what he's going to do. Hopefully he didn't have a whole bunch of credit cards and things in there, because that's a whole different situation. And then I'm thinking, like, what if she had time to go throughout the whole crib? You got passports, you got all of that stuff, and you were just having a conversation with Greg about getting his stuff in order. And bro, your stuff might be out of order now, so both of y'all sitting on the dock of the bay. Sitting on the dock of the bay. I don't know what he's going to do, man. But anyhow, that's the end of the episode, man. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Make sure to like and subscribe, share, comment, do all of those things, man. Until next time, I'll see y'all tomorrow night with episode number 2. Stay tuned. Peace.